Hello everyone, and welcome to the Crowdfunding Roundup for Tuesday, March 28th. This is a Tuesday edition, meaning I look at all the crowdfunding campaigns that came out over the weekend, so that's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. However, during this period, there were only 2 games that launched that I feel are worth talking about, and they both happen to be on Gamefound. So it will be a very short video. And then in the back half of these Tuesday editions, I usually talk about the games that I played over the last week. And I've only played 1 game during this period. So we'll be talking about the Defence of Procyon III a little bit, which means we're only going to talk about 3 different games. Nevertheless, I still have everything bookmarked. So if there's a specific game you want to go to, you can scroll over the bar in the middle there and go right to that campaign or that game. And if one of the 2 campaigns that launched on Gamefound have some interest to you, you can go into the description section, click on the link next to the game, and you'll go right to that campaign on Gamefound. Without any further ado, let's take a look at these 2 campaigns. Now, the first of these is the latest campaign in the HEXplore series. And this is a series of board games. They're fantasy themed. They're a little bit of a grab bag of stuff, of mechanics, but in general, you're walking across some kind of land, you're doing things in that land, and you'll have encounters, you'll have a character, you'll upgrade your character. It's a little bit old school in the way that the character system works. You use a dry erase board, and you have stats, and based on things that you do and choices that you make, you're going to be upgrading that player's stats. And the idea here is that before the end of the game, you will empower your character enough that you can defeat the big bad that's kind of the boss of this world. Now, there's 4 of these games that they've put out so far. The first one was called The Valley of the Dead King. Then they did The Forests of Admiron. Then they did The Sands of Shurax. And then they did The Domain of Murza Noctis. So the first game, Valley of the Dead King, had a dead king. The second one, The Forests of Admiron, was more in a forest setting. Sands of Shurax was in a desert setting. It had these big things that looked kind of like sandworms. And then The Domain of Murza Noctis featured a vampire. It felt kind of Transylvanian-like. Also kind of demonic. And for every game that they've done one of these games for, they've also done kind of an expansion called The Return to Valley of the Dead King or Forests of Admiron or Sands of Shurax that gives you additional content that you can put into it. They also have a couple different decks of cards for each of these games. So we're going to go through and look at all of this content, and this is something that if you're interested in this, there's a lot of stuff that you could buy. Now, they have gone back to the first game and created a campaign book that plays with the Valley of the Dead King. So it gives it more of a story. You can go through this campaign multiple times. There's like a narrative adventure to it. And that was fairly successful. So now they're doing it a second time, and they're doing that for the second game in the series, The Forests of Admiron. So this campaign book is called Fall of the Ancients, and what we're looking at today is the campaign for that book, that narrative scenario book. But because this is kind of a big series, a big IP with a lot of stuff to it, there's a lot more things that you can back. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of background. And you know what? Before we look at anything, let's take a look at the video here. Jonathan Mariucci, that's the designer of everything, all 4 games and the 2 campaign books.
campaign for HEXplore, the Forest of Adramon, where you can explore the Green Flame Forest as you desire, to create your own unique story. In this open-world adventure, with over 300,000 words and 1,000 passages to read, your choices determine your fate. You will meet dozens of NPCs and decide who to assist and trust. Nearly 100 locations await you, including the verdant beauty of the great trees, the once proud elven cities, now dangerously infested with enthralled citizens, and the rotting lands of a forest corrupted by an evil force beyond even Adramon's control. Wherever you go, whatever you choose, the fate of the Green Flame is in your hands.
Do not believe these lies, my child. Your fate is in my hands.
Okay, so that was the video, obviously, and if you notice, I've been mispronouncing the game's name. So it's the Forest of Adramon, not Admiron. Good to know. For this particular campaign, though, the goal here was $40,000. They are at $205,000, so they're well funded. They're already at 500%. And as we see here, the campaign will end on April the 23rd, and this project will deliver in September 2024. So it is a ways off until delivery. But let's go ahead. You can see I'm thinking of backing some things here. Let's go ahead and look at what's actually available, because there's more than just this campaign book. All right, so we're just going to kind of scroll through. Here's some of the art, which you've already seen in the video. And I mean, I'm very impressed by this, you know, and this game hasn't taken off in the same way that Gloomhaven has, Gloomhaven and Frosthaven. And Isaac Childress obviously had a huge runaway success with that series. But this is another kind of single designer who's just singularly responsible for this IP and has grown it into this massive thing. And from what I've seen so far, I've been impressed. I do have some of the games already, and I haven't gotten to the table yet, but I'm going to try to do that before this campaign ends, just so I can see, you know, if I do indeed want to back something through this. But I'm very excited by this series in general. I think it's very cool. The one caveat, though, is I think you have to not be afraid of a certain amount of old school RPGing, in that, you know, you're playing with a dry erase board character sheet that gets upgraded. So it's not totally slick. There are some, you know, kind of nuts and bolts, pen and paper type stuff you'll be doing. Now, as you can see, we've got a few different pledge levels here. For $39, you can just get this new campaign book. Now, if you go down to this pledge here for $99, you'll get the base game, The Forest of Adramon, and you'll also get the new campaign book. So if you really just kind of want a taste of this series, that's probably a good place to start. If you go down a little bit further, let's see which one is. So this one's a little bit, this is kind of the next step here. Solipsist. You'll be getting the base game, the kind of expansion to it, Return to Forest of Adramon, the encounter deck, and the living card deck, and we'll talk about what those are in a minute, and you'll be getting the campaign book. Now, if you go to the Warden, That's for $172. They'll be throwing in this hero chest. And this is a place, it doesn't hold all of the games, but you can hold a lot of the components for the various games in it. The cards and tokens and things like that. So it's sort of a collector's box, but it doesn't really hold everything in the games, just much of the components. Now here you can see there is this pledge level early. Let's just look at not the early ship. Because the early ship of some of these are already kind of gone. I'm not sure if they went by a certain number of pledges. Sometimes they go by a number of pledges. Sometimes it's by a timer. But the fact that this is around makes me think that, and this is not, makes me think that it was by a number of pledges. So they've got this Rune Master, and that looks like it's getting you, well, let's take a look. Okay, so this is where you start to see a lot of this stuff, right? You've got the Valley of the Dead King core box, and the expansion, and the campaign book. This was the first campaign book they did. It was called Click's Madness, and they did it for this game because that was the first game. You've also got the encounter deck, and you've got the living card deck. Then you've got the Force of Admiron core box, the expansion, the new campaign book. It looks like a digital thing for it, and a stretch goal pack, and then the encounter deck and the living card deck. And then you've got the third and fourth games in the series, which have not had campaign books written for them yet. So they only have a core box, an expansion, an encounter deck, and a living card deck. And then the fourth game is the Domain of Mirza Noctis, core box, expansion, living card deck. And I guess there wasn't a encounter deck made for that one. But also in this campaign is the hero chest. So this is kind of an all-in. And I mean, there's a huge price on this, but you're getting 4 big, fantasy open world games that are like hugely replayable. You're getting 2 campaign books that make it into an even deeper experience. You're getting the, expansions and encounter decks, living card decks. You're just getting a whole lot of content, but the price is huge, obviously. And this is an early ship, so that's going to get shipped a little earlier than the rest of it. Let's see what the Realm Crosser is here, though, because that's a little bit different. What is different about this one? Okay, they're throwing in a few other things into Realm Crosser, and the price, it's only a $14 price difference. And it looks like the difference is that in this Realm Crosser pledge, you're also getting some dice bags, some dice packs, and that may be it. It may be $15 for all the extra dice and dice packs. Okay, now let's keep looking down and see how else it's sort of packaged, because there's so much content. I think it's worth looking at it in different ways. So here they've got everything split out into add-ons, and they've got it by game. So again, you could just pledge, the campaign book. Like if you already had Force of Admiron, you could just pledge the campaign book. But if you're trying to get certain things as add-ons, you've got the core box here, you've got the expansion. And let's just take a look at the expansion. So this is how they describe this. Expand your hero library with all new rules, races, and a new character augmentation traits. Add dozens of cards to your core game decks, gain legendary equipment, meet new allies, and battle several new bosses. Gain the ability to move through the Fey realm across the board in an entirely new way. With this expansion, players even gain the ability to become the villain. Become the Magi and work against the heroes, completing ambitions of your own and learning powerful rituals in order to stop them. So that is the Return to Force of Admiron, and there's one of these for each of the 4 games. And as you saw, it adds on like a whole bunch of different content, different kinds of content, just a breadth of content. So for any of these games, you're going to be able to get the core box, the expansion. I think they all have one of these packs, one of these card packs, but only some of them have the second card pack. And then only the first 2 games have the campaign books. And obviously with this game, Admiron, they've also got, or Admiron, I gotta keep mispronouncing it because it's just in my head wrong. But they've got a digital download as well of the campaign book, which you can get for less. It's significantly cheaper. The campaign book would be $44. This is $14. And then the stretch goal pack, I think there's no price on it here. I think it just is going to come if you're getting other things. And then they've got a bundle that it kind of includes everything. And I think it's only for forests that they've got a neoprene mat, and that's available for $34. And I don't believe that's in any of the pledges. So if that's something you wanted, you need to add that on. This is what that looks like. Here, there we go. So it's, going to be a board, but neoprene mat. And I imagine they will probably follow with similar mats for the other games. Okay, so the living card deck. So the content in this deck box requires Forests of Adramon core box. It adds 60 new cards to supplement forests. 24 circumstances, experience new encounters, treasures, nature effects, and more. 12 destinations, 24 peril cards. So this is going to, and here it says here, 60 additional cards to supplement the Forests of Adramon core box. So it's just going to give you more content for the game, much like the expansion does. And then the encounter deck, this encounter deck adds a new way to play the Forests of Adramon. All previous existing encounters from the core box, the expansion, and the living card deck are reprinted with epic new art. So that means that nothing in this encounter deck is new. They're just taking everything from the other 3 sources and packaging it together. These decks add a new way to play the game by separating the encounters into their own deck. Additionally, these encounters are not restricted to the volume they originally appeared in, allowing you to add and customize what encounters will appear in any volume you play, meaning that you could use this encounter deck with the other volumes in the series. So this, I think I have any of the encounter decks because I wanted to play the game first before I started, buying things that repackage the material. But I've seen this kind of thing in other games where, they take certain things and repackage it as a way within the game to play it differently. Something like Aeon's End will give you character packs and card packs that are all, it's like the same cards you already have, but that way you can have all of the characters with their starting card bundles all kind of set aside. And that's not something that you'd need if you're just going through and playing Aeon's End, a few characters at a time. But if you want to have it all kind of packed away that way to make it really easy to set up and play and tear down, where every character already has, a specific deck for that character, it's a super helpful thing. So this is kind of like that. It's a way to easily access all the encounters from the game just in a simple form. Now, if we go here, we're going now back to Volume 1, and everything looks very similar, right? So you've got the core box, you've got the expansion, you've got the campaign book, the living card deck, the encounter deck, and up here in the top left, you've got that bundle. And, prices are going to be similar. I'm not sure if they're exact. Let's see. I'm doing a quick compare. The campaign book, it looks like all the prices are the same for all the components, except maybe for the campaign book. So the campaign book, it's called Clicks Madness for the first game, is $44. And the new campaign book for Fall of the Ancients, it's also $44. Okay, so everything is very consistent price-wise from game to game. And then if we keep going down, well, here we've got the hero chest. And it comes with 3 internal removable boxes, some plastic trays, dry erase markers. It's just a storage system. It's a way to keep everything, but you can't fit all of the games in there. It just allows you to separate things by tabs and dividers and stuff like that. So that way, if you're kind of mixing and matching content from games or just kind of keeping it all in one place, you can easily sort through it all. They've also got dice bags, they've got dice packs, and they've got rune stones. Now, if we continue to go down, here they're starting to package it by game, right? So they've got Valley of the Dead King, the bundle, the Forests of Adramon, the bundle, and then they've got a bundle for Sands of Shurax, which is the 3rd game in the system, and they've also kind of got that broken out. So they've got the base game here, they've got the expansion here for Sands, and then they've got the living card deck and the encounter deck. And then they've got Domain of Mirza Noctis down here. So core box, expansion, living card deck. I don't think they ever made an encounter deck for Mirza Noctis, but then they have the bundle. Okay, so that's everything. And the project timeline is that they're going to ship in July 2024, but there is some early pledges for material that already exists, which would be everything except for this new campaign book. So if you're ordering something that is kind of older content, they are looking to get those pledges out in October of this year. And then they kind of have shipping broken out. And I'm not going to go and reapply it to all of the content. It's just too much. But they list it by weight. And, here's the location. So the US is down here. And it's all separated out by kilograms. So you can kind of see the shipping. And they also have a shipping chart by kind of product type. So the first one, weight, is if you're getting the new stuff. And it's shipping in Q3 of 2024. So you could look up your shipping that way. But if you are getting the older content that's already existed, that's going to come earlier, you can check the shipping, and that's going to be subdivided by kind of content type. So this is kind of an amazing system. There's a lot of stuff here. And I guess if, I haven't played it yet, so I can't really recommend it necessarily. But I do know that a good starting point would probably be the first game, which is Valley of the Dead King, and that there is a campaign book for that. If you wanted to start with the newest stuff, you could go with the Forest of Adramon, and that is the only one that has a playmat available. And then if you just wanted to go with the most recent content created, that would be the Domain of Mirza Noctis, but there's no campaign book for that. So there's a lot of different ways to, kind of get your feet wet and explore this world. Look, you can play this with 1 to 6 players. So it can be a solo game, but you can also play with a larger group of players. There's just a lot of ways to play the game, and there's a lot of content there. And I'm pretty excited by the fact that they're having, a new campaign book kind of thing. That is HEXplore, Fall of the Ancients. I think if you're looking for, kind of old school fantasy campaign in a board game format that isn't, necessarily the most technically evolved thing. Like there are kind of new and old aspects of gaming in it. This could be a real gem of a find. So this again is on Gamefound. And the second campaign we're going to look at is also on Gamefound, and it's called Star Colonies, the card game. Now, this one is a deck builder. It's a card game, and it's by this company called Davies Design Games. This one's a little bit more rough around the edges. Now, they have a funding goal here of £9,000. They're currently at about £3,000, which makes me think that this probably will not fund because they haven't done 2/3 of their funding in their opening 48-hour period. And usually that's what you need to do for a successful campaign. The campaign itself is going to end on April the 8th. And if the game does happen to be successful, let's see, it will be delivering in August of 2023. So here you get a look at the game. And you can see that, just the production level and the graphic design, everything's a little bit rougher around the edges than like the HEXplore games. Even those are old school, they're pretty well produced. And Jonathan Mariucci, who does the HEXplore games, I think, from everything I've heard and everything I've looked at, has just been nailing it out of the park. But this is a little, this is a designer who's kind of just starting out a bit more. Let's take a look. Lawrence Davies. The only thing he's done, is this game called Lord of the Realm, which it doesn't have a year on it. It's not like really produced. So this really would be Lawrence Davies' first game, if and when this gets made. But it's a deck builder, space-themed card game. And you can see, so there's like a pledge here for a print and play for £8, and then the full game for $30. And what else do we have here? Okay, for $45, you get an expansion with it and kind of a bigger box. And then he's got a retailer pledge and like a double pledge for 2 copies of the game. All right. shipping for this. This is going to be a little confusing to sort through. So he's got this broken out kind of by volume and by weight, and there's a VAT, which normally in the USA we don't really have to deal with the US, but it's becoming more and more common, especially if things are shipping from Europe, that they are now charging like a VAT to the US. So there's a 7% charge on top of everything else. So, you'd have to figure out what you're going to pledge and then go through this and kind of crank it out with a calculator based on weight, I think. And there's not a really good way for me to do that right now with a calculator. Certainly not for multiple, pledges. But let's take a quick look. Manufactured in China. So they're saying that the game itself is going to come in around 1.4 kilograms in weight. They're guesstimating, with the expansion at 1.8. And let's see, shipping costs. Estimated shipping cost to UK Europe, £8 per unit. A VAT of £5 and $6 to US Canada. Okay, so I think they're saying it's going to be a $6 in shipping, but then there's going to be a 7% VAT tax. So, if we're looking at, let's say the full game, £30, which so it's like a $37 game, and they're saying, I think, what was it, $6 in shipping, which seems reasonable. Would bring you to 43, but then you're going to have a 7% tax on top of that. So that is Star Colonies, the card game. There's some of the card art. And here it is on the table, and I'm not seeing too many videos, so I don't know if there's much you can do in the way of looking for it doesn't seem like there's like a video teach or anything like that. So, but that is Star Colonies, the card game. And before we go, I'd like to quickly talk about a game that I played on Friday, which is called the Defence of Procyon III, designed by David Turksey. And I had an amazing time with this game. I've been wanting to play this game for so long, but it is a very hard game to get to the table because it has asymmetric roles, and it's designed as a 2 versus 2 game. So essentially you're playing this game in teams, although we played it 1 versus 1, which means each of us played like 2 different roles. But if you were playing it with 4 players, you'd have one player playing these aliens called the Aethan in outer space on one board, and their partner would be playing those same aliens planet side as they try to wreak havoc on this planet. And then they would be playing against 2 people on a team who are playing the humans. And so one player would be playing the humans in space, and the other player would be playing the humans on this other board, planet side. And each player has different mechanics. Most of them, I think all of them, use cards, but the cards work differently for every player. Like one player has a combat bag where they're drawing cubes out of it, and how much damage they do depends on what they pull out of the bag, the hits and misses and things like that. And there's ways for different players to affect the types of cubes that are in that bag. That's the alien player. The human player, planet side, these are both planet side. The human player, planet side, has 4 kind of hero characters, and each of them has wounds. And as they take damage, those wound cards will go into the human player's deck, of which they're choosing actions, and kind of clog up their deck. So it's a little bit of a deck builder. But they're also moving around Marines and militia, and they've got scientists they're trying to get off planet. Scientists are these little tokens that they need to get to this central area on the planet side board and then shoot them up into space. And the alien side on the planet are trying to get to the central city location and knock out these pylons and take down this force field. And everything's worth kind of different certain amounts of victory points, and there are several different endgame triggers. Like if a player passes 42 victory points, then that will be the final round. But if the aliens kill a certain number of, I think it's 10, of the human scientists, then they'll just win automatically. And if the aliens get in and kind of destroy the central city area, they will trigger the end of the game, and the game will end at that round. And then if the game runs for 10 rounds and none of those end game triggers happen, then the game will just end after 10 rounds, and whoever has the most points will win. Then you've got the other two team members are kind of in opposition to each other, who are up in space. The human kind of space fleet called Armada, and they control certain kinds of ships. They've got 5 or 6 different kinds of ships. They do different things. They kind of fire different ways. Some of them close, some of them from range. They move a little bit differently, the various ships. And then the alien player has their own sets of ships, and they work much differently. They can one-hit anyone, but all of the human players' ships have shields. And so the alien players' ships are secreting these kind of spore clouds. And once they get a certain number of spore clouds in a zone that equals or exceeds the human player's shields, they can just one-shot that ship. So they're kind of flying around and spitting out all of these spore clouds into space. And some of their ships have kind of adjacency rules where they give additional health to ships in adjacent zones. And so the alien ship player is trying to kind of spread out their fleet to spread their health around and really kind of bulk up their other ships. There's an interesting puzzle for each of the players, and every player's mechanics works differently, and their cards work differently. And a lot of them work in ways. You've got multi-use cards, so you're going to be drawing a certain number of cards, and you might be using like the top of one card and the bottom of another card. Or another player might be drawing 3 cards, and they can use them any way they want. They could use the tops, all the bottoms, or they've got like a pad of abilities, and they can put the cards on those abilities to trigger those abilities. There's just a wealth of different mechanics, and David Turksey is a mad genius. David Turksey has designed almost every solo mode known to man at this point, but he is also one of the designers on Anachrony. He did the Imperium Classics and Imperium Legends cards games. He's also designed Tawantinsuyu, Tekenyu, Excavation Earth, just a bunch of really good Euros. And another thing he did was Roman Roll, and that was through a company called PSC Games. It was a kind of a Euro roll and write with like dry erase stuff, and it was, I believe, the same company that he did Roman Roll with that published the Defence of Procyon III. So I've been waiting to get this game to the table for like 2 years because I just think it looks so good, and playing it's a really, really solid game. But obviously it's tough to get to the table. There's 5 rule books, the main rule book, and then a rule book for each player. And I think there's even more kind of a rules overhead for the different players than there is for something like Root. So if you have a dedicated gaming group and people who want to spend some time with something like this and shift the rules around, there's a really good game here. It's just pretty hard to teach and get to the table, for the first time. And everybody obviously needs to know how their mechanics work, but they also need to have some idea of how the other players' mechanics work as well. Because one of those players they're going to be directly fighting against, and another one of those 4 players is going to be on their team, and there'll be things that they need to do kind of interacting with each other to work on some common goals to make certain things happen. Like if I shoot a scientist, if I'm the human player on the ground and I shoot a scientist up in orbit, I need to make sure that my human space partner is going to be in a position to pick up that chip, because if they can't get to that chip quickly enough, or get that ship kind of out into orbit, then it's going to blow up, or the aliens could kill it, and I'll lose a scientist. And if I lose 10 scientists, we lose the game. There's other things that can happen about sending down bombardments or ground strikes with one of the space side forces, basically bombing the planet for points. There's a lot of really cool things in this game, but again, it's a game that's a little bit harder to get to the table. So I'm rating this an 8.5. I'm really looking forward to playing this again. And one of the cool things about it is you can play it solo or two-player with, either kind of two-handing it as a solo player or playing two-player, both players playing the humans, and you can play against kind of AI aliens and have the space side aliens and the planet side aliens controlled by AI decks. And there are, I think, 3 different scenarios if you want to play that in a cooperative mode or a solo mode. So I'm definitely going to get some more time with it, and I think Kristen and I will probably play it cooperatively, at least for a scenario. I think she'll be able to play it if I only have to teach her, one of the 4 parts, and then I'll just control the second one, and the other 2 sides will be controlled by AI. But for, war gamers or, players who like space-themed combat and don't mind some rules and like asymmetric powers, this is an amazing game. It's just, you wish that there were more games like this, or I wish that there were more games like this, but you understand why there's not, because it would be a hard sell, I think. And, people who are playing this, it reminds me of something like Oath or the upcoming Arcs, where those are games that have asymmetric stuff going on, but also kind of have this evolving world and an evolving campaign. So you need players with that kind of mindset who are going to kind of show up again and again to play this. At the same time, it's not like a campaign game, so if you have players who like dungeon crawls and big kind of story campaigns, they wouldn't be getting that in this either. This is a tactical and strategic game for 2v2 play with asymmetric powers, but it is amazing, and for anyone who likes this kind of game, I would give it a high recommend and say try to track it down. It was on Kickstarter 2 or 3 years ago now. I think it delivered about 1.5 to 2 years ago. So 8.5 for me on the Defense of Procyon 3. I'm really looking forward to getting it to the table again soon. I will be back tomorrow with another video looking at everything that launched on Tuesday. And then I'll be back on Friday looking at the things that launched on Wednesday and Thursday, and also looking ahead on Friday, in that Friday video, looking ahead to a few hand-picked campaigns that are going to be wrapping things up and completing their funding next week. And the 3 campaigns that I'll probably be covering in that Friday video are the new Marrakesh Essential Edition, the new expansion for Sentinels of the Multiverse, and the new expansions for Townsfolk Tussle. So thank you very much for spending some time with me. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd like to support this channel and support content like this continuing on into the future. Have a great week, play lots of great games, and I'll see you very soon, actually tomorrow. Take care.